The Ron Paul newsletters explained. Many Ron Paul supporters are too young to understand them. They're still using Oxy 5. But people who are older will understand them. Think about when they were written. We're talking about the Death Wish era. The Ron Paul newsletters could be called Death Wish 13, the Ron Paul edition, because that's what it was all about. Crime was high, and there were these riots in LA after Rodney King got clubbed up by some cops. A bunch of blacks decided, after the verdict came in that none of the cops were guilty, they decided to have a riot. Not because they cared about Rodney King. They just used it as an excuse to have a riot. And they had a riot. And it was pretty intense. I can remember Reginald Denny taking a lamp over their head. I can remember some other things, or a bunch of Asians that got killed. I don't recall any of the cops being Asian. But Ron Paul decided to make money off of it. So he came out with a newsletter to promote these ideas against that. Death wish ideas. Same thing as Charles Bronson in those movies. Just think of those movies. He was a victim of crime, and no one had a voice. There was no voice out there for victims of crime. So Hollywood took it on. They took it on with Clint Eastwood and Dirty Harry. But this time with Death Wish, it was a little different, because he was not a cop. He was a citizen who lost all faith in the system. So he took it into his own hands to be vigilante. You could also call the newsletters the Ron Paul Vigilante Report. They went after so-called minorities and other people from Death Wish, from the Death Wish movies. The stereotypical 1980s thug. Some of them were white, by the way, so they had a mixture of criminals. You think about punks and things like that. So they mixed it all together for demographics, probably, and try to sell more tickets. So Ron Paul came out with a newsletter. He definitely knew what it was all about. It was to make money, because people were sick of all these riots. They were sick of the other riots too, the ones in, I think, Chicago or whatever it was, or maybe it was LA again, I don't remember. But a basketball team won. Their basketball team won, so they had a riot. And a lot of people got killed, a lot of property damage. And for what? Because of a stupid basketball game? So people needed a voice, because there was no voice. The politicians, they couldn't be too heavy on it, especially Democrats. They weren't going to totally criticize all those blacks, because that was their base. So Ron Paul saw that as an opportunity, and he put out these inflammatory newsletters, because they would sell. Nothing else out there was being offered like that, except for Death Wish movies. Death Wish 1, 2, 3, 4, and on and on. That's how it all happened. And he made money off of it. And he knew all about it. This idea that he knew nothing about these newsletters is ridiculous. And all his young supporters that are they've been injected with all these vaccines to make them politically correct. Yes, they have a politically correct vaccine. It's so pathetic. And all the TV and the movies they've watched, all the integration movies and all this other crap, you know, they have this weird view of the world. It's all this integration. Everything's connected, not just computers, roads. It's people too, genetically connected. And they can't understand it, so they just deny it. Watch. When this video goes up, people are going to be like, "You don't know what you're talking about. He didn't write those newsletters and you disavowed him." Hey. That's how they're going to act, like Elmer Fudd. But he knew about him. Everyone knew about him. Everyone loved Death Wish who had any decency. They loved watching it. I loved it. All the crime. You know, walk around a high crime city. Go home and watch Death Wish. Made you feel real good. Made you feel good there was someone out there. But during those riots, there was no one out there. No one was defending decent people. He just copied the Charles Bronson movie. That's all those newsletters were. There may have been other writers. That don't matter. He made his money. We all have the right to make money. But don't sit there and act like he didn't write them. In fact, many Ron Paul supporters kind of wish he did. And that's a fact, Jack.